Hello everybody and welcome back to the Drag Detective, where today we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to do a little take on my how blank season should have went, but just change it a little bit to better match this season, Drag Race season 14. In my opinion, such a good season, amazing cast, amazing challenges, amazing runways. Everything is there, but there was still a couple of issues that the fandom in general had with the season. So I'm going to make it as unrigged as I can while also fixing some of the problems that the fans had. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, speaking of sense, can I tell you something very embarrassing? I have been using the same cologne since like freshman year of high school. So that's like a decade now, and that is where today's sponsor, Scentbird, comes in because they have fully changed the way that I use and think about colognes and perfumes. They are a true life changer for me. Scentbird lets you pick a different designer fragrance every month for just $16. They have perfumes, they have colognes, they have lots of unisex options, and when you order a new fragrance, you get a 30-day supply so that you can kind of test it out and see if you like it, so you don't have to commit to like a full bottle. And this is the part I really think is fun. Scentbird has a quiz on their website where you can take it and figure out what scents kind of match your personality and what you're looking for. Let me show you what I got because I'm very excited about this. This one is Eau de Campagne. I think that's how you pronounce it. Very fancy. It says it has notes of bergamot, wild herbs, tomato leaves, lily of the valley, and vetiver. And I don't know what half those things are. All I know is that it smells amazing and very just like woodsy, willow woods. And I love this one. But my favorite one that I have tried, and I have been wearing it basically every single day since I have gotten it. It is called Cabin Retreat, and I'm so happy that Scentbird can get me out of my like middle school cologne days and finally put me into 2022. So make sure to use my coupon code TDRAG55 to get 55% off of your first order at Scentbird. That's literally just $7 for your first order. It's available in the USA and Canada. So thank you so much, Scentbird, for modernizing how I think of fragrances and how I use fragrances, and you can check out the links below. So thank you so much, Scentbird, for sponsoring today's video. So we're going to go episode by episode and look at how things should have went if it was unrigged and if some of those problems were not there. So I'm very excited. We'll see how the season turns out, how different it would be. But I do think, honestly, looking back in like 3 years, people are going to be like, wow, we really complained a lot during season 14, and for what? Because it was such a great, consistently fun season, even if it lasted 2 whole extra episodes than other seasons. I truly think it's great, and I don't want the title of this video to be like, oh, this season is crap. Here's how it should have went from this no drag knowledge, no one ass bitch. No. I just want to take a look and see what would change if we made the season more like other seasons. Because the season kind of was an outlier in, you know, the chocolate twist and the length and the non-eliminations. So let's just take a look. We'll see how things change. And we'll talk at the end about which one would have been better, the original season or the one that we end up with here. So first, we are going to get rid of the chocolate twist. Only because I don't think there's any way for it to not be rigged from the very start. Go watch my chocolate video on that. And I don't think that the payoff was worth it. Like, we went every single week hearing it's chocolate, it's chocolate, it's chocolate. Then finally, Bosco gets it, and it's just like, all right, cool. Well, let's move on. You're still here. Like, I think the idea of the chocolate twist was better than the actual execution. And I do think that they could have something like this in the future, a twist that was sort of like it, like a veto button, basically, from, I think, The Voice. They have a veto button, or is it X Factor? Something like that. I think Ru or Michelle or Carson or whoever could have a veto button and just be like, hey, we're not ready for you to go home. Cool, I'm pressing the button. Some confetti goes off. You're safe. Like, that would be more, I think, genuine and natural than trying to, like, force this oh, you chose a chocolate bar week 1, and definitely we didn't rig it to make sure that none of the first 4 queens to go home got it, and it had to be someone who had a challenge win, and it had to be someone who could feasibly win the season. Like, I just think it would be just so much easier to give Michelle or Rue a button, and just, if you are sad with the outcome of who went home, press the button, and they get to stay. And I don't think anyone would be like, because it's just like, yeah, they like the person. They don't want them to go home. Cool. There's not this veil of this mysterious chocolate bar. I don't know. So yeah, I ditched the chocolate bar. I also made there only be 12 competitive episodes like in prior seasons. This season there were actually 14 competitive episodes. So I cut 2, and both of the episodes I cut were some of the favorite episodes of the season, both of myself and the fandom. So that just kind of shows that maybe shortening the season would not have been a better idea, since we would have missed out on 2 great episodes. Other than that, we're just going to mostly talk about how it would have went if it wasn't rigged. So with those 2 changes, let's go right into episode 1, the talent show. And I'm not going to change any of the placements here in episode 1, but what I am going to change is we're going to have Orion's Story and June Jambalaya lip sync to Water Me by Lizzo, and they're going to have the moment where it's like, June Jambalaya, Shantae, you stay. And she's like, oh my gosh, and Orion's Story is like, damn it, I'm the first out. And then we're going to have RuPaul say something like, Orion's Story, Shantae, you also stay, because we're not going to get rid of anyone this first episode. I just feel like getting rid of them, watching them do the mirror message, watching them do their little like confessional in the workroom on their way out was so unnecessary when they're literally just being brought back in episode 3. I think you could have the same emotional moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm going home, and take them out of their misery right then and there. There's no reason to like have them go through all the motions of being eliminated when they're not being eliminated. I think they could very easily just do that, and it would have been completely fine, and everyone would have been like, cool, makes sense, let's move on. So, episode 2, what I am going to change, and it's literally the most minor thing in the world, is I put Jasmine Kennedy in the top over Georges. 1, because she had the better critiques than Georges, and 2, because I think for storyline purposes, as we're going to see, it helps to have Jasmine have a high placement here. So, again, we're going to have Diabetti and Deja Skye lip sync to Fallen by Alicia Keys, and Diabetti is going to be saved right there on the spot. So all 14 contestants then move into the ball. I also changed something here in the ball. I think this is a way more fun way of doing it. Since there are 2 since there are 2 separate balls, and they each have different categories to fill. One is the animal print ball, one is the red, white, and blue ball. We are going to basically critique them separately. So there's going to be a winner from each group, there's going to be a high placement from each group, a low placement, and a bottom placement from each group. I just think that would be a more fun way to do it than like, we'll just scramble you all together and who cares. Because, I mean, they had different prompts. Even if they were similar, they had to do a resort look, they had to do a evening look or whatever, they still had different prompts. So I felt like it would have been fair to judge them separately. So let's look at each group separately. First, we have the animal print. Now, I think it's fair that the top 2 are Willow Pill and Alyssa Hunter, for sure. I think keeping Willow as the winner here also was, 1, great for her storyline as being the initial one that everyone underestimated when she came in wearing flip-flops, and then getting this win right off the bat really just kind of shifts the expectation to her being a front runner, and I think was a really great storyline for her to start the season with. And Alyssa Hunter 1000% deserved to be in the top this episode. Personally, I might even give her the win, but I do think overall Willow winning this episode is just better for the narrative arc of the season anyway. So those are the top 2 from this group. And then we have Bosco, who I think did a very safe job overall. That leaves us with Carrie Colby, Orion's Story, Cornbread, and June Jambalaya. Now, this was a little difficult. I decided to make Orion's Story safe because I think that her looks told a very cohesive story, showed exactly who she is and what her drag is, and still managed to fit all of the briefs that were given for the runways. So that leaves Cornbread, Carrie, and June. And honestly, I think they all had really good looks, and they had looks that didn't work. So for me, I looked at the final look, the bridal look, the one that they had to make in the workroom, because I think that is the most important look of the three. And one of these is better than the other two. I don't think any of the three of them are like phenomenal, but I do think one is better than the other two, mostly because it's just cohesive. Even if it's not the greatest looking garment I've ever seen in my life, there's at least some cohesiveness to it, and that is Cornbread's. So that means we're going to have Carrie Colby and June Jambalaya, one being low, one being in the bottom. And really, I think that it has to come down to the first two looks that they brought, because their final looks were both very sloppy and messy. And I think overall, Carrie did have better looks for the first two categories. So that means Carrie is going to be low here, and June is going to be in the bottom. Now let's take a look at the red, white, and blue looks. And a lot of these queens, I think, fall right in the middle for me, looking at all 14 queens. So it was a little hard to judge. I think Ingeria, 1000% was the winner of this group. All three of her looks were stunning and gorgeous. And the one that she made literally looks like she brought it from home and some designer had it done for her. So Ingeria gets her second win in a row here. And then it really came down to me between Diabetti and Lady Camden for who was going to be in the top. And I chose Diabetti because I think, one, it's good for her storyline. We know she's going to last throughout the season. So having her go from being the what would have been first out to now being in the top, I think is a really, really great storyline. Because if you have Diabetti and Orion's story both just safe this episode, it's kind of like that story arc doesn't go anywhere. So to put one of them in the top, I think is a good idea, just to keep that storyline in the heads of the viewers. So Diabetti is going to be in the top. Lady Camden is going to be safe. I put Deja Skye as safe. And I put Jasmine Kennedy as safe. So that means Georges is going to be low. And the reason I put Georges low is because there was at least one issue, even if it was a slight issue, with all three of her looks. Her first look, I think, didn't fit the brief. I don't think this looks like resort wear. I think it looks like a club dress, like a Studio 54, we're going to the club. And it was just a little bit basic. It's just a plain red dress. Her second look was absolutely stunning, except she had a fashion malfunction the entire time on the runway. And those things matter. You know, you want to look presentable and perfect on that runway. And your dress falling so low that like your nipple pops out for the whole runway is an issue. So then looking at her third look, it just doesn't read bridal. It's a clean look. She looks stunning, but the prompt was bridal couture, and nothing about this says bridal. So I did put her low here, and that leaves Maddie Morphosis in the bottom two with June Jambalaya, and we know what happens. June Jambalaya is the first eliminated from the season. So now we can move on to the Super Tease episode, an incredible episode, and this is going to be kind of wild. Ingeria Paris Van Michaels is going to get 3 wins in a row when she wins this episode. I also have Deja Skye in the top with her because Deja and Ingeria, both together and separately, really did so well in their Super Tease and ate up a lot of that screen time just because of how funny they were. I also chose to put over Willow, Maddie Morphosis in the top. If you watched my Riggory of Season 14 video, one of the critiques that I had for the season was that we don't get to see a vast array of queens get their time in the spotlight. It's really just the main characters of the season who take up all the top spots. And in other seasons, I compared it to Season 12, even the queens who went home early, a lot of them got at least one moment to shine. Like Nikki Doll in the ball, Jan had a couple moments in the top, Aiden Zane had some moments in the top. So I felt like this was a justified placement. She led her team to success, and she had some really fun moments that one, well, if they were cut out, but in this case, they wouldn't have been cut out, and it would have been a very justified high placement. So then looking at who would be in the bottom three, I actually, instead of Cornbread, I put Orion Story in the bottom three here. And here's why. Cornbread was put in the low placement because her Silky Nutmeg Ganache recreation moment where she's talking about food, they saw it as like a cheap shot. But I also think Cornbread had other funny moments in the Super Tease when she's racing, when she's talking to Jasmine. Like, she had other moments that I think made up for that kind of like, we've seen it moment that she had in the Untucked scene. Whereas Orion, she has one moment where she makes out with herself in the mirror, and it's fine, but we don't see her really anywhere else. And the other place that we did see her in rehearsals gets cut because it was so cringy. So I think Orion definitely should have been low here. I understand why she was safe, because she was just low the week before, and it would have been weird for her to go home, then have two low placements in a row and not lip sync for either of them. But in this case, I think this is her low placement for sure. And that leaves us with a bottom two of Georges and Alyssa Hunter. If you've seen my Riggory of Season 14 video, which I'm going to stop mentioning, and just go watch that before you watch this, because these are kind of like paired videos. I definitely think Carrie struggled during the rehearsals, but in the final product, her moments were really, really solid. So I think she was very deservedly safe in this episode. And Georges was the one that was hidden in the final edit of the Super Tease in order to stay out of the bottom two. So we're going to have Georges versus Alyssa Hunter, and they could have saved themselves just by putting Georges in the bottom, because I think Georges would beat Alyssa Hunter in this lip sync. And then Alyssa Hunter would go home, and you wouldn't have all this rigmarole about, well, Alyssa Hunter was robbed. Why'd you send her home when she won the lip sync? This is just a very easy way to fix that by, doing what should have been done in the first place if things were fair. Moving on to the Save a Queen episode, another amazing challenge. I think the top three were fully correct. Lady Camden and Angeria in the top, with Bosco taking the win. And I didn't change anything in the bottom either. We have Cornbread being disqualified because of her ankle, and then we have Jasmine Kennedy as low, with Georges sending home Orion to one of the best lip syncs of the season, My Head and My Heart. Cool, awesome. Design challenge. This one is going to be a little bit different, mostly because I think this was an opportunity to change up some storylines, and we all know that Georges winning this episode was a little bit whack. So who is our top three? I think Lady Camden for sure could have won this episode, and here I gave it to her because she had such a good storyline where she had been building the last couple weeks better and better and better. So she makes a stunning look, and I gave her the win. I also gave Angeria a spot in the top, as well as Willow Pill. Willow's final look is something we have never seen on Drag Race before, with these giant monster arms. There's a full storyline to her look. It's not just her coming out in a pretty dress. And as we saw in the episode, she kind of has a storyline about how her chronic illness kind of is impeding her in certain moments of the season where she can't open the boxes to get the contents inside. And then, no one is helping her, which, what the fuck. But also, her then overcoming that, getting a top spot for the week, and turning out a really, really cool look. I think it's just a better storyline than a bunch of queens in the top who just made a pretty look. But again, this is an episode where I think a lot of queens did super well, and you could justify a lot of people being in the top. So let's move on to the bottom three. I feel like I need to justify this because a lot of you guys felt that I was wrong about this in my other video. But I put Jasmine Kennedy as low, and I put Carrie Colby in the bottom with Maddie Morphosis. And here is why. So we have Jasmine's look, which is, it's giving me housewife, it's giving me rich bitch, it's giving me she's on the beach in St. Croix for the weekend. And I at least know what she's going for. I don't see anything that I'm like, this part is ugly. It's not impressive. It looks very like we've seen it before, but there's nothing on it that I'm like, ew, what is this? Carrie's, on the other hand, I don't know if she's a mermaid. I don't know if she's a fish. I don't know if she's neither. I mean, I don't necessarily know what she was going for. It looks aquatic, but the story that she wanted to tell with this look is not coming through, and it really just looks like a bunch of stuff that is like thrown onto a bodysuit. It looks like when you go fishing, right? And they pull out the net and there's like a fish in there, but there's also like a water bottle, and there's also like some fishing wire, and there's also like some rope, and they're like, oh, we gotta clear out all this crap that we just pulled out of our ocean because people love to pollute. That's really their favorite thing to do. So yeah, that's what it was giving me, and I think it looks very sloppy, and I don't think that it was as solid as Jasmine's was. Not saying Jasmine's was solid, but at least she told a story, I understood the story, and I think she at least did that part correct. Carrie didn't. So we're going to have Carrie Colby, and we're going to have Maddie Morphosis lip sync to Sugar Mama. And yeah, Carrie Colby's going to win. I mean, we barely really saw Maddie Morphosis in this lip sync. She kind of was just like going all over the place, and we were really just focusing on what Jasmine was doing. Yeah, I still think that Carrie could beat Maddie in like a sexy song like this. So now we are going to skip Daytona Wind because having to skip 2 episodes, that episode in the long run had no lasting effects. No one goes home. No one even lip syncs for their life. It is just a top 2 lip sync and we move on. So we're going to cut it. But again, that's why I said maybe this isn't the best thing to do, because that's one of the best episodes. We get Camden's reveal. We get Camden in the lip sync. We get Diabetti having a spot in the top 2. Like, that episode was so good. And I do think losing it here would be pretty sad. So we're going to move on to the girl groups. And so far, all of the queens are still intact that were in this episode. I'm just going to do it. I'm giving Willow, Bosco, and Diabetti the win for Bad Boy Baby. If we look at UK, right, the United King Dolls versus Banana Drama, like, not everyone in the United King Dolls was on the same level. Like, Bimini and Tace were clearly better than O'Hara and Lawrence, but they all still did an amazing job and had clearly the better song, so it makes sense that all 4 of them take the win. And I see that here. I think Diabetti clearly did the best out of the 3, but their group as a whole was clearly better than the other 2. So I gave all 3 of them the win here. And then we get Angeria and we get Deja, who are the best 2 from their groups. I put Carrie Colby as safe because even if she wasn't giving exactly what they wanted from her, I still think she gave a solid performance and was animated the whole time and did all the moves right. And that's more than I can say for the bottom 3 that I picked, which were Lady Camden, Jasmine Kennedy, and Georges. Georges I put as low because she wasn't as on as she is like when she's lip syncing. And we see this later on in the rusical as well. And same with Jasmine Kennedy. She just wasn't on. The reason I put Lady Camden in the bottom 2 over Georges is because Lady Camden's performance was just weird. And I talked about this in the video. Something about it was weird. Something about it was off. And whether that was the look, whether that was the dance moves, whether it was the look paired with the dance moves, something was just afoot here, a little jarring. And I wasn't a fan. And she had kind of a pretty basic runway as well. So I think they could justify putting her in the bottom 2 here. But don't you even worry about it, because her and Jasmine Kennedy are 1000% getting a double Shantae here. They're both going to move on to the Snatch Game. Yes, we had to change the order of some episodes so that we have 8 queens for DragCon, which means we have to get rid of one of them here. Again, I don't think this Snatch Game was as bad as they edited it to be. And if it was, it's because Ru was not volleying, Ru was not laughing, Ru was not giving them what they needed in order to have a successful performance. I think there were 3 queens that brought some really fun gags, some really fun jokes, and really were their characters. And that was Bosco, Camden, and Deja. I think you could very easily justify them as the top 3, with Deja obviously taking the win and her storyline finally getting some payoff about how she's always doing well, but she just can't snag that win. Georges, I think, had some funny moments. I mean, honestly, I know people really hate her performance, but she had some really funny jokes that I think RuPaul would laugh at in another circumstance. And Angeria, she obviously was kind of hard to understand, but she was funny in a way of like Yara Sofia doing Amy Winehouse, right? And then we had Diabetti, who was kind of a weird performance, but I think it was better than who I chose for the bottom 3, which was Willow Pill, Jasmine Kennedy, and Carrie Colby. Now, Carrie Colby, she actually did pretty well in the comedy challenges. In the Super Tease, her final performance was fine. In Save a Queen, she did fine. I'm not sure, though, that in this challenge she would be able to keep up. But she is so charismatic that I definitely did consider her as possibly doing well. I wasn't confident enough. So I did put her in the bottom 2 here with Jasmine, with Willow's runway saving her for the week. So we have Carrie versus Jasmine, lip-syncing to, I'm just going to do it, Telephone. I think that Telephone should not have been the final lip-sync. Made no sense. Let's throw it in here on Snatch Game, an iconic challenge that everyone's waiting for. You want to have an iconic song to pair it with, and people have been begging for Telephone to be a lip sync for years. So I chose Telephone to put here. Jasmine versus Carrie. Jasmine is going to obliterate this, and yes, I 1000% put Telephone here because I wanted to live in a world where Jasmine Kennedy got to dance to that song. So Carrie Colby is going to go home, and we're going to move on to the DragCon challenge, where our teams are going to be the same. And like I said, this is an episode where there should be no low placement because everyone did good except for the bottom 2. So we're going to have 3 high placements with Willow, Angeria, and Bosco. And I gave Deja the win here. I was very torn between giving it to Deja or to Willow. I think there are reasons why you could give it to both. But since Deja did take on the moderator role, she had such a bigger role than everyone else. Like, so much of the panel fell onto her, and she nailed being moderator. I think it's only fair that she gets the win then, as well as having an amazing runway. So yeah, Deja then gets 2 wins in a row, and I think for her storyline, that would have been amazing. She's kind of this like endgame threat that she had been doing well from the start, but now she's really picked up some steam and she's taking these wins, and the girls are like shaking in their boots. So we have a bottom 2 of Jasmine Kennedy and Georges, and based on all of the polls that I saw after this lip sync, Georges is going to go home here. So then Jasmine makes it to the rusical. Her performance in the rusical is anything like her performance in the girl groups. I think she's still going to be in the bottom 2 here. And I think she's going to be in the bottom 2 with Bosco. And since there's no chocolate, someone's going home this episode. But let's look at the top 3. I don't think they're going to change. I think it's going to be Lady Camden taking the win. She annihilated this challenge. And then Willow Pill and Diabetti in the top. So what is going to happen when we have Bosco and Jasmine lip-syncing to Heartbreak Hotel? I actually think Bosco could take this. 1, because if this is like any season, you can't survive 4 times in the bottom. You just can't. And Jasmine also had 2 low placements before that. So I think it's just like, it's your time, Jasmine. You need to go. But also, like, Bosco had 2 wins and had just been in the top the 2 weeks prior. So I just think Bosco surviving this lip sync makes more sense for the narrative. We already saw her beat Jasmine in a lip sync once, so why couldn't she do it again here? So now we move on to our roast with our top 6. So we're not going to have a double elimination. We're not going to have a bottom 3. Bosco is going to win. We're going to have Willow and Lady Camden in the top 2. And that leaves a bottom 2 of Diabetti and Deja Sky. And, like, I mean, this song was just, like, tailored for Diabetti to win, right? So Diabetti wins. We lose Deja Sky, but I think that we have Deja Sky used better throughout the season here. She really got 2 wins in a row, and I think that that would be a lot better for her than kind of getting her win at Snatch Game and then just, like, being gone the next week or 2 weeks later. Like, it was kind of a really big build up, and then she got the win, and they were like, all right, bye. Here, it's like they could build her up throughout the weeks. She gets the win. She gets another win. And then she loses out right before the finale. So we're at the rumix. Diabetti is going to get the win because, 1, I think she did the best. And 2, it's a better storyline. She had just been in the bottom 2. She, has only had 1 win. Here, she really slams it. She's trying so hard. And now she catches up in wins with the other queens. And she can go into the finale with, like, this really nice trajectory. Lady Camden then is going to be high. Willow Pill is going to be high. And we have a bottom 2 of Angeria and Bosco. They lip sync to take your pick of the Lollapalooza songs. It could be the In Vogue song. It could be, I feel like it could be the Luther Vandross. It could be any of these, like, slower, more meaningful songs than Telephone. And I don't think it matters. I think Angeria is going to win. And we're going to have Bosco leave right before the finale. So we have our top 4 finale. Willow has 2 wins. Camden has 2 wins. Angeria has 3 wins. And Diabetti has 2 wins. So they're all pretty evenly split, and I think they're all evenly matched. Whether we do the lip sync for the crown format or we do this new one, I liked the new one, but I don't think it matters. I think you still always will have a top 2 of Willow Pill and Lady Camden. And then Willow is going to win the final lip sync and win the crown. So let me know what you think of this season. Not much changed, like, elimination-wise. It's not like other seasons where you have, like, a top 4 placer out, like, 4th. But it's still different enough, and I think the pacing was a little bit better. But we did lose the Daytona Win Challenge and the Lollapalooza episode, and I do think both of those episodes were so good. So in the long run, I don't care that we had 2 extra episodes, because those 2 extra episodes I thought were amazing. How different is this track record that I created from yours? Let me know in the comments below what you would change. I tried to make things as fair as possible while also making the storylines fit a little bit better throughout the season. But let me know what you think. And what are your final thoughts on season 14 now that we've had a couple weeks to, like, ruminate on the finale? I think it's in my top 5. I think my top 5 are now, like, All-Stars 2, All-Stars 6, Season 12, Season 14, and Season 6. I think that's my top 5. But I want to know what you think. Where does it fall for you? And obviously, also, there's some recency bias, so ask me in a year, and it might be nowhere near my top 5. But as of right now, I'm still very, very high on this season. And again, thank you so much, Scentbird, for sponsoring today's video. The links to get 55% off your first order are in both the description and the pinned comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. Here are the links to all of my social medias. Make sure you subscribe and like the video. It has been such a long day solving the mystery of how many lip syncs could Jasmine Kennedy survive on season 14? And the answer is the limit does not exist. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.